Well, hello and welcome to Movie Paradise. I'm your host, Nathanael Molnár, and this is Movie Night Tonight. Every single week here, we watch a new film and we discuss it in depth, with each month having a new theme. We were in the month of January, which we're finishing up now. Yeah. I find the irony in saying that every single week we watch a new film, discuss in depth when we missed last week, but that's all right. We're catching up now, so we were in the month of January, which was our month of boxing films, and the movie we're discussing tonight is The Fighter. And once again, I'm Nathanael Molnár. I'm joined by Rob Giachinta. Thanks for being here, as always.
Anytime.
So, before we get into our discussion, and this is a spoiler discussion, we're talking about The Fighter as if you watched it with us. Before we get into our discussion, we're going to go around real quick and say our first impressions of the movie and roughly how many times we've seen it. Starting with you, Rob. Kick us off.
I'd have to say this is the first time I've watched it. I mean, I've seen bits and pieces on TV, but I've never watched it all the way through. And I have to say, I thought this movie was good. I didn't love it like I think I've loved all the other ones we've reviewed this month. Mm-hmm. Well, last month. But, but I thought it was good, and I thought the performances are what really stood out, and the direction, too. You could tell. David O. Russell, I think, is a filmer you can tell, like, when you're watching his movies, that this is a David O. Russell movie, and you could I could just see influences of American Hustle and Silver Linings Playbook all over, and those are probably my favorite aspects. I found the story overall to be a little just predictable and just kind of what I was expecting. But I have to say, I think it's a good enough boxing movie where, like, if you were to watch it at home, I think you'd enjoy it.
Nice. So I've seen The Fighter once before, and I really like this movie a lot. Like, we can, once we get a little bit later into this episode, we can kind of talk about how they all rank together in terms of the movies we've watched. And just for those listening, just a reminder, the movies that we have watched for this past month we watched and discussed Rocky, Raging Bull, $1 Million Baby, and now The Fighter. So I really love this movie. I think this movie was great. I love, first of all the performances are fantastic. Like, everyone is great in this movie, especially Christian Bale, who, we'll probably talk more about that. I thought the writing was great. I love, something we've been talking about with all these movies is the idea of boxing as a backdrop for character drama and sort of relationship drama going on between characters, and I think maybe more than any other movie you see that in this movie, where first and foremost it's about the conflict and tension and drama between the characters, and the boxing, I don't want to say it becomes an afterthought because that sounds like a bad thing, but it really does take a step back and go on the back burner so that the focus is really on this family, this giant family of so many people, and the dysfunction between all of them. And so I thought the direction was great, the writing was great, the boxing scenes when we get them, I thought they were very well choreographed and set up and very well shot. I thought the not just the score but the soundtrack for this movie, one, was really good, and two, I thought really added to the vibe and the feel of the film. And I liked how it also dealt with issues other than just it dealt with what happens when you are at odds with your family, and when you're someone like Mark Wahlberg's character of Mickey, and you're put in this position of, I have my family who wants one thing for me, but I feel like I need to do another thing, and what happens when you have that. So overall, I really enjoyed this movie a lot. So, let's just get right into, first of all, the performances.
Yes.
Excellent across the board. And I thought the shining performance for me was Christian Bale.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I thought everybody was really good. I mean, I wouldn't say this was my favorite. I don't think this was Christian Bale's best performance. Would you, or no?
Maybe not his best performance, but I think it's up there for me.
Now, I found this interesting. So he ended up winning Best Actor in the Supporting category. Do you feel he was rightfully put in that category, or no?
That's the age-old debate.
Yeah, I
don't know. It's tough. It's tough for me because I feel like his character, I think it all kind of depends upon what you personally constitute as a supporting character or supporting actor. Because I think if you look at it in terms of screen time, Christian Bale's character and Christian Bale himself gets a lot of screen time in this movie. However, I do think the narrative and the story is structured in a way where this is Mickey's story. Mm-hmm. And so if you have one principal main character, by definition, everybody else is supporting to that main character. So I don't think it's clear cut and dry. Like if Mark Wahlberg was put in the supporting category, I think that would be a clear cut. Okay, come on, that's the leading guy is now in the supporting category.
I'd say the same thing about The Godfather, but that's another discussion.
But I think you can make an argument that Christian Bale's character is a supporting character in this story, even though Christian Bale probably gets just as much of screen time as Mark Wahlberg does.
And I find it funny now that, like, I kind of agree with you. I think he kind of is the supporting character, but he has so much screen time. I can see the debate on both sides. It's kind of funny looking at a movie like Ford vs. Ferrari, where I think it was kind of like the same thing, where like I don't think he was necessarily the lead in that movie, but he had so much screen time in it. But then for that, they were campaigning them both for lead actor. I found that kind of funny.
Yeah, I think from the movie,
I think it's all just studios like you know trying to put their actors in the best spots they can to get them awards in the end.
Yeah,
and I mean, in the end, he ended up winning an Oscar, so I'm sure he's not mad about it.
Yeah, I agree. It was strategy on their part because they knew he wasn't going to be able to get I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head the list of nominees for best lead actor. They knew he wasn't going to win.
I was shocked. I had thought Mark Wahlberg was nominated too. I guess he wasn't. I didn't know.
No, he wasn't. So
as a producer, he was, but
So this movie, it did win Best Supporting Actor, like we've been talking about for Christian Bale.
Yeah.
And it won Best Supporting Actress for Melissa Leo.
What an underrated actress I think she is, and I don't even think this is her best role. Mm-hmm. The movie we're going to discuss in a couple weeks. I mean, can I spoil it or no?
Sure.
Prisoners is a movie we'll be discussing sooner or later. She's so good at that. I think is her best role. She was excellent in that movie. She should have been nominated for that movie. I think
that movie should have gotten more nominations.
Yes, 100%. But she's very underrated. I think someone that deserves a lot more praise when it comes to recognition. Even
Definitely.
though she has one now, but still, I feel like she's not like a household name like she should be.
Definitely. And I agree with you. Like, I think in Prisoners and some of her other things, she gives a better performance. But she is great in this movie.
Yeah, she's very good. Sells the accent quite well. That's another thing. I had to say the accents in these movies, there wasn't one that stuck out to me like, oh, that's fake. Because, us from being around people with those accents, I mean, I kind of have one myself almost. But you can kind of, like, when you're watching a movie, you can kind of pick out and be like, well, that's fake.
Yeah. And then continuing off of the Oscars, so those were the ones that won. It was also up for Best Picture, Best Supporting Actress for Amy Adams, Best Director, Best Editing, Best Original Screenplay.
Yeah. I wonder when Amy Adams is going to get her due. I bet sooner or later she'll win something. But
hasn't she been nominated for like 5 or 6 or something? Like,
she's another, like, she is, I'd say, a household name now, but I don't think I've ever seen a performance of her where she wasn't giving it her all. Yeah, especially in this movie, she was very good.
Yeah, she was great in this movie. Amy Adams is a fantastic actor.
And I like that David O. Russell likes to work with a lot of the same actors, too. Because I mean, Christian Bale in this and American Hustle, right?
Yeah.
He's so great in that movie. And we see Bradley Cooper working with him on both. Jennifer Lawrence.
Yep. There's a lot of carryover.
Yeah.
I think that's a sign of a really good director, because it's not just that, they want to use the same actors. Yeah. It's that the actors want to work with that director again and again and again. I think that speaks volumes to the relationship that the director has with the actors and the quality of the director themselves.
Well, I mean, Mark Wahlberg now and David O. Russell, I don't think are on speaking terms anymore after this, though. I've heard they had some infighting. But it's funny because David O. Russell he started off kind of high. He had Three Kings and some other smaller movies. But then after I Heart Huckabee in 2004, his career was kind of dead in the water almost. And then Mark Wahlberg, who's a producer on this film, kind of brought him onto this picture. And then ever since then, he went on his next 3 movies. All 3 were nominated for Best Picture. All 3 he was nominated for Best Director. He got 2 screenwriting nominations. he's done pretty well for himself. And I know
Yeah.
he has a new movie coming out soon with Angelina Jolie and Jamie Foxx and Margot Robbie.
Oh, I forgot about that.
That one, once that one's like, we know what year it's coming out, that will definitely be in my like top 5.
Yeah. I love David O. Russell. I think David O. Russell is a great director, and I love watching
another
his
guy
movies.
who I think is kind of underrated, to be honest with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Even though he has the ignition, I mean, not the recognition from the Academy. I don't think more people know his name like they should.
He's not a household.
No, he's not like a Nolan or a Spielberg or Scorsese, but
he delivers great films.
Yes, great. I think almost smaller movies with big stories. I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Like I wouldn't want him directing a Marvel movie, but
I'd be interested.
I mean, yeah, who knows? But
because he'd have
like,
Amy Adams,
him,
Bradley. Rocket Raccoon would be in there.
I like him doing these kind of family dramas, or just dramas in general.
Definitely. And I think what's also interesting is that so the trainer in this movie, I believe he's a cop. I think he was a retired cop in the movie.
Yeah.
That guy.
No, I don't think. Well, he was wearing his uniform.
Well, you might have. I don't know. But anyways, he was a cop. That was the real guy who was in who actually trained with everything, and he played himself in the movie.
Oh, nice.
And
I love when they do stuff like that.
Yeah, and he
for
was
smaller
good in it.
roles,
Yeah,
not like the lead. I would like not what was it 17-15 to Paris or anything like that.
Yeah. 15, 17
whatever
Paris.
it was.
But yeah, no, and he was good in it too. This movie has a lot of great performances. Yeah. I think the writing is great. Like, I love there's a lot of like back and forth overlapping dialogue as people just kind of argue over each other. And just from a writing standpoint, I know like that's really tough to kind of do.
Yeah. And
from the directing standpoint as well, to get all this sort of overlapping dialogue and people just constantly arguing with each other. And I really liked what this movie did with Dickie as a character, and Christian Bale's character, and his struggle with addiction, and how it sort of, like, it didn't become the main focus of the movie. It almost felt like, for a while, they were just alluding to it without kind of outright saying it, up until they got to the point where the HBO drama, or documentary, aired, and then it felt very overt, and I liked how it just kind of, it was something, because for the family, it was something that everybody knew but nobody talked about, and the movie kind of took on that quality itself. We all kind of knew it, but the movie never overtly said it until it became public knowledge when the documentary aired.
Yeah, I think that's what I kind of wanted more from the movie. I found Dickie to be the more interesting character in my mind, and I understand it wasn't really his story, but that I kept wanting to see more from his character, I feel like, and him be more delved out as a character. I think he gets some moments to shine, but I found Mark Wahlberg's character, while I thought he was relatable, I also found him to be a tad bit boring in a way where I just wasn't quite invested in his storyline.
So, I agree. I think Dickie was the more interesting character, but I wouldn't say equally as invested, but I was also definitely invested in Mickey as a character.
I could totally relate to him because I've totally been in situations where, your family wants this one thing and but secretly in your heart, you want something else. But I don't know. I feel like he needed, I don't know, maybe just some more, I can't think of the word, but I just didn't feel completely satisfied with his character. I don't know.
What I found interesting about his character was I really liked the idea of a non-confrontational boxer, in that Mickey never, he didn't want to confront anyone. He didn't really like conflict, and he also really, we kind of talked about with some of the other movies this month. We've talked about characters having major character flaws, and masking those character flaws with boxing. And one of his big character flaws was he did not know how to communicate with people
or stand up for himself.
He couldn't stand up for himself. He couldn't confront other people when they were walking all over him, and he did not know how to express to people, "Hey, this is a problem. I don't like what's going on." He couldn't air these things, and so I thought all these different things were really interesting because by nature, they kind of go against someone who goes into the ring and beats up people. The fact you have a non-confrontational boxer, that seems like an oxymoron.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting delving into his character.
He kind of fights in a non-confrontational way, too, in the ring, where he kind of just, like, lets the other guy, like, punch him for a while, and then as the other guy gets tired out, then he goes in.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
I think it really shows that Mickey, as much as Dickie training Mickey was helpful for Mickey, it didn't really seem like he was a properly trained boxer in any way. No, he just kind of like, he just gets into the ring and he just kind of like blocks his face.
And that was another thing with the boxing scene. That's why I didn't find them as like riveting as other movies. I don't know. I just kind of found them to be a little bit stale. And I understand that they're trying to portray a real life story here, but it just didn't necessarily work for me.
Yeah. What I thought, in terms of how they shot the boxing scenes, what I thought was really interesting was how, for a lot of them, they shot it to look like as if it was airing on TV. I was going to say
that. I liked that a lot. That was cool.
Yeah.
I was like, why does that look different? I was like, oh, I get it now. What's going on?
It was something different that we haven't seen.
Yes.
Something we've been talking about this month was how they shoot the boxing scenes for every single movie. Rocky,
they're all kind of different.
Yeah, and that's something I really like about this. And
we didn't even do that on purpose.
No, it was, but I think it just kind of shows how even in this one subset of a genre, things are growing and evolving and changing. In Rocky, it was just shot outside of the ring as a spectator's point of view. In Raging Bull, you're inside the ring with the character because you're following that character all the way through. $1 Million Baby, you're outside of the ring, but that's because the movie's following Clint Eastwood's character, and so you're right along with him as he's watching Hilary Swank fight it out. And then in this movie, it's outside of the ring, but it's as if you're the characters watching it on the TV, which is for a lot of the characters that we're following in this movie, other than Mark Wahlberg, that's how they were viewing it.
I'd say that was my favorite way out of all the four movies. I think this was my favorite way they portrayed boxing, but I just didn't like the overall fights. I didn't find them to be that, like, exciting. Like, I don't know, I just found them to be kind of predictable, and, like, I was like, oh, well, he's getting punched all this time. Well, I mean, I'm sure he's going to, like, just figure out a way to win at this point. So.
I don't know, because and maybe it just speaks to you weren't as invested in his character, and when I was watching it, I was more invested in his character. I was more like, oh no, he's falling back into it. He's just falling back into his, like, retreat.
Yeah, just not wanting to do anything.
Not wanting to do it, and then he just in one shot just kind of hits somebody and knocks him out. And then suddenly everybody loves him. Everyone's booing him and hates him, and then he just gets one hit, and then everybody loves him. And I kind of wanted Mickey to be like, you guys were just screaming and yelling and absolutely hating me, and now all of a sudden, now you love me. Just because I got one hit in. But I don't know. I was more rooting for Mickey as a character. I was feeling with him that pain of he's stuck, he's like a deer in headlights, not really knowing what to do, he's frozen, and then he just has to do something and gets one hit in.
Not to get too far off subject, but you want to know before I forget it, you want to know what my favorite scene of the movie was, though?
What?
And it was probably, well, I bet some people thought it was funny, but you'd have to be like a really big movie. I just loved the part where he brought Amy Adams to the foreign movie theater, and that guy behind it, it's like, oh, the cinematography's great, and they're just like, what the fuck is that?
I love that too. That was great.
And she's just,
I was thinking, oh shit, that's me.
And then when he fell asleep in the movie theater, that made me laugh. And then I liked when Amy Adams, when they were leaving, she was like, fuck, there was subtitles the whole fucking time. I had to read the whole fucking movie. And I was like, yeah, that's that. I can see that person. Yeah. And she was like, really? Someone, like, on your friggin' blue-collar working, like, gravel crew told you that was a good movie?
That was great. But I was just like, I was thinking to myself, shit, that's me.
Yeah,
that'd be, the cinematography is fantastic. This is one of the best movies of the year.
And they're just like, what the fuck?
But yeah, no, I agree. So, going back to comparing this movie a little bit to some of the other ones we've seen, one of the things we've talked a lot about this month has been how toxic masculinity and ideas, falsehoods of characters thinking this is the way I'm supposed to act, or I'm supposed to express myself through violence as a way because they can't express themselves in any other ways. I'm curious. I didn't see that as much in this movie as we've seen in the other ones. I was curious, did you really see that as much in this one, or what was your thought on that?
No, I just think he kind of was doing it because, that's, his life, kind of, like, similar to $1 Million Baby, he really didn't have much else going on in his life. The only thing he really had was his kid, and besides that, he just had some low-level job, and this was what was, boxing was which was gonna get him a bigger apartment so he could have his daughter over and all this stuff. It was boxing just seemed to be almost just something for him to do like financially.
I think almost it was more like his family pushed him into it.
Yes, and also like his family was so big about it, he had to be big about it.
Yeah, and like I really feel like Dickie was just trying to live out vicariously through Mickey being able to box.
And how many times did he say, like, I don't want to do this anymore? Like, several, I believe.
I think, I don't know. Because part of me did feel like Mickey didn't really want to do it. But at the same time, he did, like, it wasn't like he said to them, I don't want to box. I mean, he did at one point say this, but it wasn't like he was saying, I'm done with boxing, I don't want to do it anymore, that's it. It was, I want to go do it with these people because they're actually going to take me to the next level. So part of me feels like, at least just from watching this movie, I don't know exactly, because this is based on true story and everything, I don't know everyone's details, but from this movie and seeing it, it feels like maybe Mickey didn't actually want to do it in the first place and was pushed into it, but then came to kind of like it, but felt like he was being held back.
Or just kind of, you do something you don't necessarily like, but it's kind of like, doing a regular job. You might not like this, but you're good at it, and you're getting paid for it, so what are you not going to get, not going to work or whatever? Like, not to get too personal, I don't necessarily like my job, but I do it to get paid, and the company respects my talents, so,
And I don't think there was as much toxic masculinity in this movie as much as it was toxicity within the family.
Yes.
And that, I think, we saw first and foremost in this movie more than... we've had toxic family elements definitely in Raging Bull.
Yeah.
And we definitely had some of it in $1 Million Baby. But it was at the forefront of this movie. And I think that was something it really did well, was this really dysfunctional family acting as if they are functional. But I thought that was something that this movie specifically did really well. In covering that. And part of it is the performances, part of it is the writing. But I think that you have the relationship dramas in some of the other movies we watched, like with Rocky, it was between Adrian and Rocky. In Raging Bull, it was Jake LaMotta and his wife and his brother. In $1 Million Baby, it wasn't it was a relationship between two friends who were becoming friends and respecting each other. In this movie, it's pure family. And how they were... It was just the highs and lows of family. Like, they all love each other, but they all hate each other.
Yeah.
And they all can't stand being with each other, but then they're going to rally behind each other in the next minute. Completely dysfunctional, but they're acting like they're completely functional. It was just the topsy-turvy nature of this family. And I think that was a very interesting way into this movie. And then through that, you get the stories of Mickey being non-confrontational, trying to tell his family no, but not really knowing how to, except through Charlene, which I also really liked the relationship between Charlene and Mickey.
Yeah, I thought they had good chemistry together. Right?
Yeah, they had good chemistry, and I felt like Charlene really... she was helping him a lot, really grow as a person and be able to vocalize and say, no, this is what you want. Tell people what you want, And I thought she was doing a good job in bringing about change in him. And then we also, through this same family storyline, get more about Dickie and then his struggles with addiction.
Yeah.
And then him trying to better himself.
Did you notice who played his son?
Yeah, the kid from Bad Grandpa.
I've met him.
Yeah, that's right, you did. Yeah.
I didn't know he was in that.
I saw. So I was watching. I didn't remember either. I was watching, and then it was that kid, and I was like, "That looks like the kid from Bad Grandpa." And I quick in my head, I was like, "Yeah, the time like this was 2010. That would be about right." And then I looked up IMDb, and it was him.
That kid's funny.
Yeah, he was good in this. I really like going to the scene where Dickie was in the prison, and they were showing the HBO documentary. I loved the structure of that scene of how he's watching it and he's like loading and he's all like, yeah, it's me, woo, and he's making jokes and everyone's cracking up, and then the second he sees his son in there, he's just like loses it. Yeah. And then he's like, I don't want this anymore. Turn it off. Yeah. And I loved going around to all the other family members as they're all watching this documentary and they're really seeing their son for the first time. And it was, that whole sequence I thought was very well done.
The one thing that I was surprised, like, there was scenes in that documentary where it was like Christian Bale was straight up smoking crack, like, he knew that was going to be in the documentary, right? Like, why would he smoke crack in front of a camera if, like, didn't want his son to see it? I mean, I know he's an addict, but, like...
I don't know. Well, he was probably high on crack at the moment that he was doing it, and he probably wasn't...
I mean, I have never been high on crack, so I can't...
Oh, you haven't?
I can't attest to its powers.
But I mean, and it was probably also something, like, I don't think he was even thinking about the fact that his son might be seeing it. Yeah. Or, you know, that his son would have anything to do with it. Yeah. Probably in his head he compartmentalized it that, oh, I have my life with crack, and then I have my life with my son. And, you know, it's like a moment of worlds colliding, and then he's...
That sounds like My Life with Crack. That sounds like the third spinoff of, like, Everybody Loves Raymond and King of Queens. Yeah.
But... No, I think it was something like that. And then the second that he sees his son in this documentary and his son's crying and it suddenly starts to come together in his head of like, what have I done? Or what am I doing?
And I really like that scene too where he like jumps out of the window or whatever and then like his mom was like crying and he starts singing. I thought that was a really powerful scene too.
Yeah. I know the real life Dickie had an issue with that scene because, according to him, the jump was higher and there wasn't the trash there to catch him.
Oh, great. Well, I mean, for trying to be realistic, I guess that the movie was the right way to go. But, I mean, if he says...
Yeah. I know a lot of the family had an issue with the movie. Like, I know a lot of the real life Dickie was upset with his portrayal in the movie, and he was, like, screaming at Christian Bale at one of the screenings or something. And the sisters really hated how they were portrayed.
Well, I mean, I might, too. I mean, they weren't portrayed in the best of lights. So.
And I know...
But, I mean, it might be true, so...
And I know the real life Charlene had an issue with her portrayal because... I guess she didn't dress the way that Amy Adams dressed in the movie. Yeah. And so the real life Charlene didn't like the implication that was giving about her character since she didn't dress that way.
Yeah.
Which
I can understand that.
Yeah. And so I mean I think any biopic is going to have some people who are fairly or unfairly upset with their portrayal.
And there was supposed to be a sequel to this. I guess nothing ever came of it, but I wonder what it was even going to be about.
I don't know. Yeah. That would be interesting. I mean, I don't know. I would have been interested to see where these characters go.
Well, now that Mark Wahlberg and David O. Russell aren't like friendly anymore.
I think too much time has passed.
Yeah, I don't think it's
been 10 years. So I don't think we're going to get another one. No. But I would have been interested in seeing where it kind of went from there because I like the characters and I'm interested in the characters. I would have been interested in following them. So now that we're at the end of our month of boxing movies, we kind of... I forget your exact wording, but you laid out at the very beginning of the month what you kind of thought boxing movies were. Do you remember what your sort of...
I think I said, boxing movies, they're mainly about broken people trying to find, this, like, some kind of puzzle piece to their heart or whatever that's, that part of them that's broken, and they're trying to put these pieces together. And most of these movies, you get to see them trying to fix themselves and better themselves, and some to avail and some to not.
Yeah. So, and I thought that was a really good way of putting it, and I largely agreed with that assessment. So now I'm curious, that was at the beginning of the month. Now that we're at the end, and we've seen 4 of these movies, and we kind of seen how they portray boxing and how they portray their main characters and all that. I'm curious, how has that changed for you in any way? Has it changed in any way?
I would say no, because besides maybe this one, this one Mickey definitely has his flaws, but he's probably, well, I don't know. The other characters are good too, but the only one that was really a scumbag was Jake LaMotta. The other 3 were just people that were down on their luck, and boxing was a chance for them to escape their normal everyday lives. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of held throughout the movies we saw. Yeah. Again, the one outlier was Jake LaMotta, who was just kind of a dirtbag, but who had psychological issues. Yeah,
definitely. I would agree. I feel like that kind of holds throughout. And I think also we've been talking about this whole month different themes and issues that are covered in these movies. Like we've gone in depth in toxic masculinity and characters feeling like the only way to express themselves is through violence in the ring. And we've talked about also that idea of characters not being able to express themselves in any other way. And also having the boxing as a backdrop to relational drama and other sorts of drama going on between characters. And I think we've definitely seen that play itself through all of these different movies. And so I think now, sort of looking back at these 4 movies, what I kind of take away from the boxing genre, and of course, these are just 4 movies. I think they're 4 big examples of the genre.
Yeah,
but I don't think
there's a ton of other good ones. Like we could do a whole nother boxing month if we wanted to do something. Like you could do Creed. You could do so many other ones. Cinderella Man. There's a lot of great boxing movies.
Yeah, I think while these are 4 really good examples, they're not necessarily the exclusively only what boxing movies can be. Although I would say Rocky was hugely influential as to what boxing movies have sort of become ever since.
All 4 of them were nominated for Best Picture too.
Yeah, that's
pretty good.
2 of them won.
Yeah. Boxing movies seem to do very well at the Academy whenever there's a boxing movie.
Yeah, if it's done I
think they make the best sports movies, to be honest with you.
They're my favorite kind of sports movies. Because as a person who's not a sports fan, they're my favorite kind of sports movies.
I'm not even a boxing fan, and I love boxing movies.
Yeah.
Not that I like to talk about sports for a second. When it comes to boxing,
all right, I'll tune out.
It comes to boxing, the reason I don't necessarily get so much into it because besides like my teams, like the Patriots and the Celtics, is because those are like my hometown teams, so I have an investment in them. With boxing, I don't know any of these people or but when you get the movies, you get to know the character, and then you watch them box, and then you have a rooting interest for them. That's why I think the movies work better for me.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think, I don't know, it's just something about the boxing genre that it feels a little more visceral than other sports movies. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just that boxing's more simple than other sports.
And it's more like a kind of not necessarily that everybody can box, but
everyone can understand
to play basketball, you gotta be a certain height. To be football, you gotta be this huge guys for in hockey, you gotta be able to skate. But for boxing, I think you just have to have a will to
Well, you got to be in a good shape.
True. Well,
strong and everything.
If you want to, there's a lot of heavyweights that aren't in. I wouldn't call them in physical shape. They're just big maulers, really. But it depends on your weight class and stuff like that.
But what I mean more is that as a viewer, boxing as a sport is much easier to grapple and get than if someone doesn't know anything about basketball and goes and watch a basketball movie, you might be lost a little bit in translation because you don't understand the ins and outs of basketball or true. Baseball or football or any of that. Whereas with boxing, it's pretty simple. Yeah. You get 2 people get in the ring, they hit each other, one wins.
I'd say hockey would be another. Hockey or soccer would be other good ones because
golf. That can be riveting.
Hockey and soccer, all you got to do is score the puck or the ball in the net. But with football, you might. Someone like you, I'm assuming you don't know what a first down is or a second down.
First a what? But yeah, so I think boxing is definitely my favorite kinds of sports movies. Yeah. And what I like about this genre of film is it feels more visceral. It feels more personal. And maybe that's because of the actual impact on impact violence of it. And I think most people who watch boxing movies and appreciate boxing movies aren't necessarily violent people or don't condone or say, hey, beating people up is a good thing. We should go out and do that. But depends upon the person. But, I agree. But there's something about it that feels more personal through the violence and more what kinds of people are involved in it and what kinds of stories can be told about those people. And so I think this has been a really good month of films. And I've really liked watching these movies and seeing, I think maybe more than some of the other themes that we've had for Movie Night Tonight in episodes and seasons past. I've really enjoyed seeing the evolution of the genre, seeing the similarities and the differences between characters, between filming styles, between choreography, between all these different things, and seeing how they compare and how they contrast. And I think it's been very insightful in the genre, for me at least. So I'm curious now. Yes. How would you rank them? How would you rank the 4 movies?
Okay, from 1 to 4 or 4 to 1?
4 to 1.
Okay, I'd go this one 4. Good movie. I didn't love it. I didn't think it was great, but it was a good, solid movie. I definitely would maybe watch it again someday. 3, I would go probably. I think I'd go Raging Bull. Again, excellent movie, but I think the other 2 are even better. And I'd go number 2. I'd go $1 Million Baby. And I'd go number 1, Rocky. Probably the less, definitely that movie, are the performances necessarily as good in the other as they are in the other movies? Maybe it's not, but I just think the overall story and just what it means to cinema, I think is what kind of puts that movie over the top.
Yeah, I'm very similar to you, except I'd flip 3 and 4. So Raging Bull would be 4 for me. I love Raging Bull. I think it's a great movie. Yeah. I just think the other 3 are better. So I'd go Raging Bull number 4, Fighter number 3, $1 Million Baby number 2, and then Rocky number 1. Like you said, I think maybe single standalone performances in the other movies are better than those in Rocky. Yeah. Maybe single standalone fights in other movies are better than that in Rocky. Maybe the standalone cinematography, standalone directing, standalone writing, all those elements might be better in some of those other movies. But collectively, as a whole, Rocky does it the best, and I think Rocky is the best pure boxing. When you think of boxing and boxing movies, exactly, because
and it's also the most rewatchable movie out of all of them too.
I'd agree. So overall, great month of films, and I think the discussions have been very insightful about the movies. So real quick before we wrap up, what are your final thoughts on The Fighter?
Like I said, I thought the movie was good. I didn't love it like I think a lot of other people love it. I'd have to go back to that year. I don't know if I necessarily would have gave it a Best Picture nomination, but I think David Russell definitely has a style that is of his own, and I love when he directs movies. I like to watch his movies, and I thought the performances were all great, and I'd probably give it a 3.7 out of 5.
Nice. Yeah, so for The Fighter, I really like this movie a lot. I think all the performances are great. The direction is great. The writing is great. I love the family tension and the dysfunctional family and the drama between all of them. I like how they chose to shoot the fights and what the fights mean for the movie. I like the different themes and subjects that it goes into, diverging from that main narrative focus of the family, like Dickie's addiction to cocaine or crack cocaine. And I think if I had to give it a score, I'd probably give this a 4.3 out of 5. I've really enjoyed this movie a lot. I think across the board it excels. So that wraps up. First of all, that wraps up our discussion of The Fighter, but that wraps up our discussion of boxing movies. Now that we enter February is going to be a very interesting month. Different kinds of movies. Our month of February, we're going to be discussing detective movies. Ooh. And the first film we're going to be talking about is Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. which I think is going to be a very interesting discussion. So we got some great movies coming up for this month of February. Be sure to tune in for all of them and check out the films and come join us for our discussions. Once again, I'm your host, Nathanael Molnár. I'd like to thank Rob Giachinta for being here. Thanks, Rob, for joining us. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe for more content. Be sure to follow us on all of our various social medias at Movie Paradise 99. Movie Night Tonight, which you can also follow on social media at Movie Night TNT. Movie Night Tonight drops weekly on Wednesdays. This one is dropping this Wednesday, but because we missed a week due to some scheduling issues, the first episode of Vertigo will actually be dropping later this week, probably on Saturday. So you want to keep your eyes open for that, and then we'll be right back to our regular weekly installments for the show. So yeah, thank you for listening, and until our next podcast, thank you for listening.